Hi folks, and welcome to another episode of Careers and Coffee. Today I'm absolutely delighted to be welcoming Chris to the show. Chris is currently working towards being a civil engineer, and he's currently an apprentice, 4 years into his degree. So he's going to come on and talk to us a little bit more about being a civil engineer. Chris, welcome. How are you doing?
Not too bad, thank you.
That's what we like to hear. And have you got coffee for Careers and Coffee, or a hot beverage?
I've just finished one.
Okay, well, if there's still like a mug on the desk, we'll allow it. We'll allow it. Now, look, why don't you tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Okay, I've been working for Suffolk Highways as a Kia employee, as the principal contractor since 2016, and I'm currently studying civil engineering at the local college. And also working towards professional membership with the Institution of Civil Engineers as part of a wider apprenticeship.
Fantastic. And I mean, what made you choose that pathway? Have you always been interested in civil engineering? Did you maybe like have a career talk at school and then you thought, I want to do that? What pushed you into that career?
Well, I never wanted to commit to going to uni after A levels and doing something that I wasn't particularly interested in half-heartedly. So I knew an apprenticeship of some description was going to be the best route at that point. I can't tell you that it was going to always be civil engineering. But in retrospect, when I think of some of the positions that I interviewed for, and I was interviewing for a long time, working in part-time jobs whilst interviewing after A levels, I think I really have landed on my feet here. I think the quality of apprenticeships can have quite a lot of variation, and the commitment from the employer is something that I've been quite fortunate with.
Fantastic. And for you, what does an average day tend to look like?
So I'm quite fortunate in my position that I've got a bit of variety. I could be in the office working with my colleagues on preparing works information for schemes to go out to site. So that'll be drawing work or preparing billing information or health and safety information. I can be engaging with subcontractors for quotes or discussing the scope of schemes, highway maintenance schemes, that is. Or I could be out on site doing investigation work, survey work, and then one day a week, this year Tuesdays, I'll be at uni, as I mentioned before.
Fantastic. And before you went into this sector, what do you feel were some of the misconceptions around it, and what do you feel you have a little bit more clarity on now that you're here in the role?
I think the main misconception is people might assume civils is limited to construction, to house building, that sort of thing.
Yep.
When, although I'm working in highways at the moment, civil engineering is particularly varied. You could be working with groundworks, geotechnics, or flood prevention schemes, road, rail, and within that, you've got local highways like I'm working on at the moment, or strategic highways, which has recently been renamed national highways. So motorways and that sort of thing, or structures, bridges and tunnels. So I'd say the breadth is far more than what people might assume as just digging holes or fixing potholes.
Fantastic. And so you mentioned you're obviously in an apprenticeship doing this at the minute. What other pathways are there into this sector?
I'd say an apprenticeship is probably the preferential route, because there's different areas of work that, I've come to realize, having done what I've done. There's more academic routes of work, and then there's industries that might lend themselves to more practical skills. And I've seen the contrast between people who've been and studied full-time civils and then come into industry as a graduate. And then people in my position who've progressed from apprenticeships. There's no one correct way. I'm sure it's influenced by the learner and also the employer. But yeah, you might well go and do uni full time for 3 or 4 years and then enter as a graduate with a civil engineering company, or you could come in at apprenticeship level, either like post GCSE, post A level, that level 3 level, or enter and hop straight into your studies for your degree.
Fantastic. And what are some of the skills that you use day to day at work?
I'd say, as will probably be a theme as we talk, communication is essential. I'm not in a big organisation here, and even in a relatively small organisation on the Suffolk contract, knowing who to speak to gain advice is absolutely key, and that can be in many different means. That can be even as we're returning to the office, speaking to people face to face. That could be more or less what we're doing here on Teams calls and fetching up your drawings on the screen, or speaking to people on the phone. Having the will to put your hand up, so to speak, and ask for help, that's absolutely key. Whether you're early in your career like myself, or whether you've been around for 30 years, because you can't cover everything yourself. People need to speak and communicate regularly, whether that's for advice on technical matters or IT matters, or who in an organisation is able to best help you. So having a good range of contacts and being able to approach people in a polite manner, I'd say, is absolutely key. But then there's more core skills like drawing and understanding of regulations of health and safety and that sort of thing as well.
Excellent, thank you. And another question for you, what is there something that you wish you'd known at, say, 16 years old?
I would say, because that would be just at the end of your GCSEs, wouldn't it?
Yep.
I would say, if you're going into a college course or if you're going into A levels at that point, what you choose to study at that point is by no means putting you into a certain channel. Of course, that's still to be taken seriously if you're entering A levels or something, but it's not sending you down a path that you're going to be fixed to. Your options are still open at that point. There's always going to be a handful of people who are dead set on a particular career, and I think they're quite fortunate because they haven't got the worries of being open-minded. But if you're at that age, I'd say certainly don't worry about getting trapped into something.
Fantastic advice, thank you. And you mentioned also, so you're 4 out of 5 years into your apprenticeship. What does life look like afterwards? Will you stay on at Kia? Is it sort of a new career, new role after that? How does that what does, I suppose, life look like at the end of an apprenticeship for folks getting into that?
Well, I'm quite fortunate where I work because I can see people who've been on similar path to me in the past, who are now in positions of seniority, who over time have sort of climbed the ladder. Obviously, organisations get reshuffled from time to time. But what you see is people have an opportunity to pursue a career. And the thing with highways, that even in this early point that I've noticed, is there is a dearth of skills. There is a shortage of people who are able to apply their knowledge in a practical sense. And that doesn't just mean, picking tools up and getting stuck in. That means, problem solving in the basic sense. So people who leave this contract and go and work in a different region, it's quite a roundabout. So I'm not in any hurry to leave, but I'm also aware that there's opportunities elsewhere in the country, and we're quite fortunate in this country that the standards that civil engineers qualify to are well respected across what would have been the Commonwealth and around the world.
Excellent stuff. And we've just had a question. So what does the day-to-day tend to look like?
I think if you're looking at planning ahead or even short term, what I'll pick out of that question is you'll have 4 or 5 schemes going on at any one time, and they don't progress. Like you finish scheme 1, then you move on to scheme 2. There'll be different steps that you need to work on and get checked off, or you might need some survey information that's obtained by an external subcontractor. So a lot of the time I'm hopping between jobs, and I also need to plan my time out, whether it's day to day or week to week. So typical tasks that I'll be working on would be you spend the majority of your time doing drawing work. But you're also looking at quotes for different pieces of work. You're also accounting, that sort of thing, in billing information. And particularly in the work stream that I'm in, drainage, which is a real interaction between natural water courses and the outside world, and then artificial, the highway. No 2 schemes are the same.
Excellent stuff. Thank you. And next question. So what is the most exciting element of your work?
I definitely enjoy getting out on site. And because we typically, when we come to a scheme, we don't have a lot of archive information. We need to go and understand the condition of the assets that are owned by the highway authority. So we all need to undertake some survey work. That could be cleaning everything and CCTV recording it. And we might not know the path of our drainage system that we're going to find when we go to site. And also, more often than not, you'll be interacting with some sort of river or some sort of private land interaction. So I like that aspect of that investigation phase. But also there is a bit of satisfaction, and that's probably the point I'm at the moment where I'm developing the most, producing information to hand over to those who are actually going to build your design that's there to solve a problem. And the key thing that I'm learning at the moment is how to get what your design is intending across to those who are actually going to build it.
Excellent stuff. Thank you. And another question we just got in. So when did you first find out about apprenticeships?
Probably informally, through like-minded friends. There was quite an equal split of friends who were going to go to uni the typical route at that age of 18, 19, and then other friends that were, undertaking similar jobs to me. So I did my own reading online, and I think it would have been around that time there was a lot of talk about the apprenticeships levy coming in, which I've been a beneficiary of. So yeah, a mixture of just informal chats and then online reading. I can't speak for whether the information that's given to students has improved a lot in schools or colleges, but at my school, the focus was universities without a shadow of doubt for sixth formers. So perhaps that's improved in the meantime.
Well, I think it depends on what school you go to.
Yeah.
But I won't get too political on that one. Another question for you. So, yeah, you obviously got a lot going on at work. How do you deal with some of the stress that you have at work?
I'm quite fortunate that I've got a good team who I can speak frankly with. But in earlier phases of my apprenticeship, where I was on rotation on 6-month or 12-month placements elsewhere in the organisation, that might not necessarily have been so approachable. So I think dealing with excess stresses, and there's also the interaction between college or uni and your work to consider as well. So you're spinning a few plates, from an early age. So I think having an eye on your priorities and not necessarily being afraid to being selfish at times. Of course, teamwork's absolutely important, and you can always help people's impression of you by volunteering to help them. But if your back's really against the wall, it might just take, being a bit ruthless with your priorities. There's a balance to be had there.
Brilliant.
Maybe I put that a bit crudely, but you know what I mean.
No, thank you. And another question. So, what do you and your company do around sustainability?
In a practical sense, rather than just a slogan or that sort of thing, in a practical sense, we consider that sort of approach in all our work. So sustainability, not just in the environmental sense, but also in the economic sense as well, and certainly the social sense. We always look to deliver the best value for our client, the county council, which is obviously publicly funded. Funding levels can vary a lot. There can be times where funding can be somewhat restricted. So that's always a priority. But in a practical sense, that could be material specification, material quantity use, and we're always thinking about the longevity. Are we building something that's going to last, or are we going to be back in 3 years repairing this? So when you're proposing a design, because every design will go through a check and review process before it gets anywhere near being built, that's something you're thinking about, longevity.
Brilliant. And one last question for you. What do you think has been your proudest moment at work?
I think it's hard to say really, because I'm well aware that I've made a lot of progress since I came. Like this last couple of months, I've been working with a new starter apprentice, and I've started thinking, about how much progress I've made. But also, I'm aware that until that degree and until that engineer qualifying is signed off, I've sort of got nothing. So not getting carried away is a big thing with me. But if you want a glass half full answer, I'd say probably getting this job is something substantial, because there's different paths that I might have taken that might have been dead ends as far as employment's concerned.
Excellent stuff. Chris, thank you so much for joining us on Careers and Coffee today.
Thank you.
So folks, that was Chris, a technician at Suffolk Highways, talking to us a little bit more about his apprenticeship and also, I suppose the skills you need and the pathways to be able to go into that sector. So huge thank you to Chris. Also, Careers and Coffee is obviously 4:30 till 5 on Wednesdays instead of our Tuesday and Thursday slots. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you.